Hi, I'm Dan Davies, Education Manager at the Illinois Supreme Court Commission on Professionalism. Welcome to Reimagining Law. We're exploring how legal professionals are adapting the delivery of services to meet the needs of today's consumers. Today, I'm joined by Catherine Marienau, Professor Emerita at DePaul University. Catherine, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me, Dan.
Okay, so we're going to cover a very interesting topic today, the topic of experiential learning. Let's start off. You're a Professor Emerita at the DePaul School of Continuing Professional Studies, and you've been at the forefront of experiential learning. First off, what is experiential learning?
Good question. Well, experiential learning is, you can think of it as an approach to learning and teaching that's based on the notion that people learn best through and from experience. This is a fact. It's supported by decades of research on experiential learning and applications in many, many different fields. So there's a robust theory of experiential learning, there's models of experiential learning, and there's numerous inventories that learners can use to help them become more aware of their own learning styles and preferences. But I think of it in the education setting as it's a particular form of learning from life experience. And as educators, then our intention is to help people extract what they know or think they know from their experience, and basically to help them transform experience into learning and then learning into knowledge, and to complete the cycle to apply that in their own area of practice. So it's a cyclical process, and I think it fits extremely well with the aims of continuing professional education, legal education.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating topic and one that I'm quite passionate about myself. Now, you talked about there's quite a lot of theories, there's a lot of practical advice about how to apply this, but CLE is its own unique beast. You know, we're dealing with highly educated learners here with a lot of experience to bring. So with that in mind, how can this method be applied to CLE, which traditionally has been very lecture-based?
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to talk first about before we talk about the how, about why experiential learning can be so effective. And I'll just plant a few ideas. I think it was Einstein who said there's nothing so practical as a good theory or a good idea. So I'm an academic. I believed in that. But you know, there's so much talk now about engagement and how central that is to learning, and I certainly agree with that. And I've become even more appreciate even more why experiential learning is so effective, why it really enhances engagement. I've been doing a lot of studying and writing about neuroscience and adult learning, and particularly affective neuroscience, which is about science of emotion. And so I think I've been able to make some links between that and experiential learning that I just want to share a couple of ideas. One is that emotion is central to learning. And most of us have been taught that rational thinking and decision-making is at its best when it's just stripped of emotion. Mm-hmm. But affective neuroscience research tells us that it's neurologically impossible to do that. That it's impossible to learn and make meaningful decisions without emotion. So the main idea here is that we actually think with our emotions, and our motivation to learn is driven by emotion. And people really only think deeply about things that matter to them, or that they have an emotional investment in. So, and then the other thing is that when we're learning something new, our brain looks for what it already knows. And it wants to associate with past experience. And those past experiences almost always have some kind of emotional load. Mm-hmm. So you asked how. Mm-hmm. Well, broad brush. Mm-hmm. In the learning setting, I think that an instructor using an experiential learning approach would invite experience of the participants into the room, so that their experience is meant to interact with the material as the instructor is presenting it. I tend to think of their participants' experience as part of the text, part of the material, and you want to try to weave it together.
Mm-hmm.
The instructor also would want to create experiences in the classroom that have people interacting with the material, again, bringing their experience in concert with the material, and doing that with each other, because that's the social learning aspect. We learn best when we learn with other people. We're just wired that way. So those are my broad brush suggestions.
So that's they're fantastic tips, and I don't think you'd find anyone that would disagree with you that we have an emotional reaction to things that we learn, and also we tend to care about the things which we're emotionally attached to. So the fact that translates, I think is it's key, and I think for those of you watching this are thinking, well, it sounds fabulous. How do I do that? I mean, I'm sure stories are absolutely going to be the key. Connecting people through stories and getting the audience to share theirs as well has got to be key to engaging within that. Would you have a comment on that?
Well, I do. I think you're spot on with that in terms of story, and I think about experience, especially when learners are coming to learn about a subject they might not know that much about. Maybe they don't have a lot of experience, but they will have some connection, some kind of connection to the subject. The instructor has stories, has experience, right? That's the expert. And you can bring in other people's experiences in the form of mini cases or short video clips. The idea is to get as much of lived experience into the conversation as possible. And so yes, that's key.
So thank you. That's great. That's great advice. Now, I do have a question which is probably in the back of a lot of presenters' minds right now, which is things are moving online. We already know that. We're not 100% sure how much they'll go back, but things have probably changed, as people realize that online is a viable option. So when you're not in the room with someone, experiential learning by default is different. I'm not going to say necessarily worse, but I think that's probably the elephant in the room. So how can someone who wants to include these stories, wants to include these things, how does experiential learning adapt to the online environment, and what are maybe some of the things to watch out for in your experience? And
So I'll admit that I have always had a deep respect for online learning, and I just wasn't so keen on doing it myself. So I'm relatively new to the totally being online, and the first time I did it was a totally online course. It was in the winter, just this past winter, and I was so overwhelmed with the technology involved and the possibilities that I took a very cautious approach, and it was totally asynchronous. It was kind of designed to be that way, but my instructional designer said, maybe you could use Zoom, or you could. Well, the farthest I went was to do some videos. So then in the spring, my face-to-face course had to be converted to online within 2 weeks. It was a new course, and I just thought I really wanted to create more of a learning community, and so I made required sessions, synchronous sessions. I had office hours during those weeks that we were not meeting as in class, and the dynamic was, it was just worked like a charm. It was just wonderful. Now I had so we did breakout rooms, we did chats, we had buddy systems, but that's in a 10-week period. So that's not what usually happens in the continuing legal education. I think there's an hour, 2 hours, half a day.
That's what you have, yeah. Unless it's in-house and you just don't have those relationships.
Don't have that luxury. So I have been doing I've been doing presentations with a colleague that were designed to be face-to-face, and we've converted them to online using Zoom. And those are 90-minute sessions. So what we found is, designing the course is always key. You have a strong design, you're clear on what the learning outcomes are intended, and the scaffolding is really important. How do you align all pieces with those learning outcomes and make sure people have some useful takeaways. Well, in a 90-minute session, you have to be really clear about what those outcomes are and the scaffolding and designing each chunk. So we would do 5-minute setups, concepts, just framing, prompt questions, people in breakout rooms, talk about their experience as they connect with those concepts, come back and talk about it, build in the next piece. So we sacrificed some of the content that we might have delivered if we were face-to-face or if we had more time. But I think we were still able to very much capitalize on people's experience and have them think through the concepts.
Thank you for that. I mean, I appreciate you being very open about the fact that maybe it wasn't something you jumped into initially. No. And I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people listening to this because this is new. And I think one particular thing that I captured was that you recognized the limitations, you recognized the different environment, and you adapted. And I think that's probably key.
Yeah.
So I do want to be conscious of your time, and thank you so much indeed. I really enjoyed having a conversation. I feel like we could have a lot more conversation around this huge topic, but it's just, you've given us some great things to think about. And I hope that the people watching this video will give them a chance to think about stories, thinking about how incorporating the audience and what they bring and thinking about that as part of the content as well. I think that's a huge takeaway. So thank you again, Catherine, for joining me. Please like and share this video and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on new episodes. Information on how to stay connected with us is in the notes. Thank you for watching.